Hello, everybody. So I was just having fun and decided to try a kind of a drippy resin sculpture. At first, I did not film it, but then it started to turn out so pretty that I was like, I have got to capture this. Um, so there it is, and I'm going to repeat that process for the second layer of the sculpture. The best I can. So, um, I'll get into those details shortly, but I covered it with a food net and I let it sit for about 2 hours. It was not the warmest day, not the coldest day. So I was just using my best guess. And I have a mason jar taped on top of a travel coffee mug. I used duct tape to keep them together and then wrapped it in plastic wrap just to protect it. So I took the semi-cured resin, still sitting on that piece of plastic, and just set it on top of the mason jar. And at first I was like, darn it, I waited too long. This is not dripping. Um, Let me heat it up. And so I'm using my heat gun to heat it up. And it turns out that it will drip. It's just not dripping right before my eyes, which is actually a good thing. If it's dripping right before your eyes, it's going to drip too much. So I work on other projects. I have tumblers going, obviously, taking the tape off of those, just kind of doing some other stuff. All right, so I am fast forwarding a little bit, and it is definitely starting to move in a downward direction. False alarm on covering it up with a tub. I wanted to give you a close-up because those drips were exactly what I was after. If I could freeze time, I would have probably stopped it right there. But you'll see that it continues to drip even more. But the colors were just absolutely gorgeous. So I was very, very happy with those. Giving you a full 360 view of my messy art area in my garage. But the marbling is just gorgeous. The color contrast, I just love it so much. And I definitely was after a black edge. So again, starting to drip even more. I love that marbling on the top. Just showing you from different angles what it looks like. I wasn't too picky about how the plastic was kind of folding. I could have manipulated it a little bit more, but I don't know. I like to leave things alone unless I have to intervene. So I just loved it. Loved it, loved it. So I decided to cover it with a plastic tub, and I'm going to show you shortly, but it continued to drip quite a bit. And see how it ran onto the table? So this is the next morning. So it definitely sat overnight and made some of those little puddles. Those were completely unexpected. I did not expect it to drip that much. So I'll show you shortly what I do to kind of combat those. I wish I could have come up with a way to salvage those pieces that had dripped off, but I couldn't come up with anything. So I wanted to kind of cut off the strands that were hanging too far down with just regular scissors. I should have gloves on right now, by the way, and I do put them on shortly. I kind of forget that I should have them on. But I wanted to start cutting away. Here's a quick close-up. Made some cool patterns for sure. I wanted to start cutting it while it was still soft. So it's not completely cured, but it's not sticky at all anymore. Like I said, it wasn't the hottest day or the coldest day either, so the cure time is just kind of my best guess right now. It's definitely fall and not summer anymore. So I'm just taking the scissors and cutting away those antenna, whatever you want to call those things, and kind of moving those to the side. And then I will be taking the scissors and trimming up any of the edges. Like right there, I cut straight across, but I knew I didn't want to keep it straight across like that. If you notice, a balled up glove just fell out of the mold, if you will. It was falling, the sculpture here was kind of falling very vertically, and I wanted it to have a little bit of shape to it, kind of like a bowl. So I just took some gloves that I had taken off. So the inside is now the outside, and they're clean essentially. And I just kind of used those as like a stuffing up inside the mold. And you'll see me in a little while. I'll shove it back up there while this continues to cure. So I'm using the scissors. I'm cutting off the parts of the drips that I know I don't want to keep. And then I will go back and try to round those edges out. I was a little optimistic that, here we go, putting it back up in there. I was a little optimistic that my heat gun would remelt those edges and make them nice and like round and drippy, but that did not happen. And I think I have that on camera shortly. So I just took my scissors and I cut them to be as round as I could. All right, so here is a little bit more of a close-up. And as you can see, it's still very pliable, but again, not sticky at all. And I just absolutely loved the striping of the colors, the way that they drip down. I got the black edges I was looking for. What I'm doing now too is, instead of cutting the edges, the drips while it's upside down, it actually helped for me to hold it right side up, because ultimately that's the way it's going to end up. And so I wanted to further kind of round out those drips with the scissors so that it was kind of visually pleasing, if you will. All right, so back on the mold we go, putting any of those stuffing items back up in there. I think I just used like old gloves that were, again, turned inside out so that nothing would stick to it. Although the plastic is up in there anyway, so. All right, so here is where I am essentially going to attempt to recreate what I already did, to make a second inner layer of the sculpture. So I have already mixed up, I believe, 14 ounces of resin sitting in that larger cup toward the back of the screen. And I know I need to divide the resin up into multiple colors, and I'm going to use the exact same colors that I used for the first layer. Oh, here's the update on the bowl. It's hardened up a little bit more. I think this is later that same day, and I'm just showing you now that the plastic comes out very, very easily. And I've been meaning to tell you this, that plastic is actually a shower curtain liner. I bought it, I bought two at one time and ended up only needing one for my household. And so I had this extra shower curtain liner laying around. I'm like, that would be perfect because it's thick, so it's not like plastic wrap that's gonna really cling and you have to kind of pick it out. So it worked out really well. And one shower curtain, you can cut up into a lot of pieces and use a lot of different ways with this stuff. So I was very happy with it. All right, so I've got my resin divided up. I'm using a resin, this is like a pigment, not really a paste, but it's kind of on the thicker side. As you can tell, you really have to shake that pigment down. And a little goes a long way, more so with the black than with the white. The white, I think I ended up needing a little bit more. I could be wrong, but the black for sure, a little goes a very long way. And I had a hard time getting it out of the nozzle, so I ended up scraping it out of the bottle with a popsicle stick. And with these little cups, I break the popsicle sticks in half, so I am not wasting popsicle sticks if I can help it. All right, so this is a rich gold metallic alcohol ink, and I am just estimating the amount of drops that I need. I think I may have put in 6 to 10 drops, but it really, you just kind of have to test it as you go. This is a metallic green. I know that was hard to read, but I bought a set of metallic alcohol inks from Amazon. They're actually really on the inexpensive side. I'm still just in the like experimentation phase here. I'm not selling any of these pieces. So I'm just going with the less expensive items as I'm experimenting. This is like a metallic purple or a violet. And I believe that said copper. Okay, and that's like a, oh, what's it called? It's like a metallic gray. I think it's called coal. And I know I wanted more of the purple, so more of the purple and less of the coal color. So I just added a little bit of resin from one cup to the other and added more purple dye or alcohol ink. All right, so speeding this up, mixing up the colors. It's that purple. It's one of my favorites for sure. And there's that black, tiny, tiny bit of the pigment. Goes a long way. And the white. So I knew I was after longer drips for this second layer, and I will show you what I did. So I purposely had a very large piece of plastic. So just to get everything to fit, for the moment, I tucked the excess underneath my pizza pan. Yes, that is a pizza pan. You don't need fancy molds to do this kind of stuff. And I had forgotten to mix up one of my favorite colors, and it's a rose gold metallic. And so luckily I had extra resin, about 2 ounces of it, left in my larger cup. And I knew that this was one of the prominent colors that I wanted. So just making rings. I knew I wanted ultimately to end up with black around the edges. So you'll see. I tried to take like a popsicle stick to push the plastic down so I could have a nice clean border, but sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I also realized that my table is not level, although I swear my table's level and this pizza pan is just warped from being so old. So if you notice that it's, kind of going sideways there, like mine, I just tilt it like that and kind of tell it what to do. But then I take broken popsicle sticks and use them as like little props on whatever side you need, just to kind of tilt the pan so that it's level or flat again. Sometimes I'll have to stack 2 or 3 popsicle sticks on top of each other just to get it to be the correct angle. As you can see, I have lots of bubbles in my resin, and I'm not worried about it at all because I've got my heat gun, I've got my torch, and I've got isopropyl alcohol in a spray bottle ready to go. And I will do all 3 of those in that order. Generally, I start with the heat gun. Depends if I want to move the resin around a whole lot or not. Most of the time I don't want to. See, here's where I'm adjusting my popsicle sticks. And also tilting it, saying, go back to the middle. Then I will torch to get the rest of the air bubbles. Sometimes a few times I'll like torch and then wait a little bit, and then I will spray the alcohol last because I've learned the hard way. You cannot, this is common sense, honestly, you cannot spray the alcohol and then torch right away. You will get a fire. So there it is with the heat gun. I'm going straight down with that heat gun, not at an angle, because I did not want to muddy the colors. I wanted to keep them in these rings. I do end up drawing the swirls. There we go. I was okay with the swirls. I just didn't want too much blending of the colors because I knew that as they drip down, they're going to blend there too. So I didn't want mud. So yeah, I usually torch at least twice because bubbles just keep rising. So because that first one sat for 2 hours and dripped pretty much how I wanted it to drip, and this one I knew I wanted to drip a lot more, I did 2 things. One, I added a flower vase to my makeshift tower mold. So it's the same mason jar on the top, then the travel coffee mug, then the flower vase on the bottom. I used duct tape and plastic wrap. So that's one thing. The other is that I only let this sit for 1.5, maybe close to 2 hours. But I wanted it to drip even more. So it was intentional that I got this on the earlier side. Now, in hindsight, this ends up dripping way more than I expected. And so I'm going to take you on that journey with me. But notice the plastic is very long because I want it to drip all the way down. And it will, I promise you. So I am just using the spray alcohol and probably a coffee filter. I can't tell. It's either a coffee filter or a paper towel, just to make sure that there's no resin or dust or fluff stuck to the plastic, because again, I knew I wanted these long drips and I just didn't want anything, catching in the resin. Sorry about my face in there. I thought I cut that out, but oh well. And we have drip off. I was just making sure my vase was as level as it could be. That's why I keep turning it, because I'm just making sure. Looking at it from all angles, not manipulating the plastic too much. And there are the drips. The drips have begun. And I did not add heat to this at all. This is all on its own. So I'm over on the side kind of playing with the first layer of it because I had to move it off of the mold. I wanted to use the same base because I knew that I wanted these to fit together. And so I had to move the first piece into what I'm using as a glass bowl off to the side. And I'm just making sure it's not like expanding or whatever. I'm just making sure it's kind of staying in place. So if I had 1,000 times, this cracked me up, you guys. This reminded me so much of a 3D printer. Just going around and around and around. And I turned my flash on because it was getting dark. This was late at night. But everything in me was like, what can I do to stop this? What can I do to stop this? Because I really liked it just the way it was, right there. If I could have frozen time. Oh, gorgeous. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. But as much as I tried, I couldn't stop it. It's like an avalanche. So I just let it be for a little while, and I was just really, wishful thinking, hoping that within the next maybe hour it would stop dripping. And that didn't happen either. So I'm going to take you on that journey of checking on this every hour until I couldn't take it anymore. It definitely started to look like an alien creature. I just couldn't stop watching that, going around and around and around. Notice I have a piece of plastic underneath that vase too. So there's my bowl. You can see a plastic cup on the side. I was just trying to keep it from falling or drying outward. I wanted to keep it kind of like a bowl. And you'll see I put a coaster mold underneath some of the dripping resin because I'm like, ooh, I can catch it and I can make a coaster out of this. And no, that did not happen. It was just too thick and muddy, honestly, by that point. By the time the resin dripped off, it was like a grayish purple, and it wasn't really that pretty. So yes, there's my embarrassingly messy craft area. I'm too eager to do the actual art and not clean up after myself. I do eventually, I promise. There's more of the drips. Again, it was actually quite mesmerizing. The colors on the top are still pretty. I like the purple. I like that the black is still around the edges. Got the contrast with the white, so I was still happy with what was left up top. I just needed that dripping to stop. So after another hour, I'm checking on it again and it's still dripping. So I'm like, okay, let's take a popsicle stick and kind of like you do with mozzarella cheese, when it's like a stringy piece of cheese, when you're taking the piece of pizza, a slice of pizza off the pizza pan, and you just kind of have to like twirl it. I thought, okay, let's do that. So I've got a popsicle stick and I'm like catching the drips and twirling them to try and get these to just stop dripping. I was making really like pretty kind of spirals with these drip areas. I was like, "Ooh, that would be so pretty." This reminded me of like taffy. Um, but that didn't work. I just had to give up. So here's the next morning or the next day. I forget what time. Um, the drips did make some cool patterns. But at this point, we have definitely stopped dripping, and I am going to use my scissors while it's still soft to cut the drip, what do you want to call those? I don't know. Long drips away from the bottom. And any really unsightly parts, I cut those off as well. Whatever dripped off, I just kind of had to discard. I wish I could come up with something to do with that, but there's just really nothing you can do. So yeah, it has a personality. I really like it. It looks kind of like an octopus, and that's okay. But the shower curtain plastic wrap, or not plastic wrap, but plastic, will come off very easily. And so I am just holding it upright so that I can look at it from that angle and then just use my scissors to round out any edges or snip off any excess pieces as needed. Okay, so back on the mold we go. I know it needs to hang out there for a few days to finish hardening up, especially because it's not hot outside anymore. I know it's going to take longer than 24 hours. The cure time on this resin is 72 hours. Again, like I did with the first one, I thought maybe I could get that heat gun on there and kind of remelt those edges of the drips, but it didn't work. So I just kind of had to give up on that. And I'm just going to do a little close-up of the first piece. As you can see, it's getting harder. Still not fully cured, but oh, I just couldn't stop looking at it. Sorry. It's really pretty. All right, so I am demolding, taking that tower carefully away. And I will be taking the plastic off of the sculpture. So I took kind of a gamble on whether or not these would actually fit together. I know I used the same base for both, but that didn't mean that the folds would kind of fit together. But after a little bit of rotating, I figured out a way to make them work. So I was just so happy with it. This was purely for fun, no rhyme or reason. All right, so back on the mold they go together, and then they're going to hang out on a shelf in my garage for at least another day just to continue firming up. All right, and so here is a shot. I am outside, hoping to get some natural light in to see the colors a little bit better. And here it is in its glory. It's a little leaning tower of Pisa, but you know what? That's okay. That's why we call this abstract art. I mean, it's sturdy. Like I said, they were both on that mason jar. So, yeah, I absolutely love it. I love the height. I love the personality that it has. And I really love that burst of color on the bottom. And then because I use some metallics, it has like a shimmer to it. So there they are separate, and there they are together. So thank you for watching. This was a lot of fun, and I hope you can try it too. Bye-bye.